Then, boys and girls, we're back for another episode. Sorry about that. We're back for another episode of Why. This time we're looking at why is the Ford GT just a terrible option in my opinion. So I like to keep up on, like a lot of people do, on all the current cars and things that are out and stuff like that. And Ford's been doing some stuff in the last couple days. Just a couple weeks ago, they released the actual horsepower specs and torque and everything for the GT500. In my opinion, they're a little bit of a letdown, but that's just because of the time and day that we're in. I'll get to that in another video. Maybe. We'll see. But today, in the last week, Ford has released that they have released a brand new 1.2 million non-street legal supercar, and it's the Ford GT Mark II. Now, I already didn't like the Ford GT. It's not a bad car. It looks wicked. It is quick. It's lightweight. Things like that. My issue with it was price point and the way they went about letting people do it. Like, why do people like Captain Sparkles have one and things like that? Why was it such a big issue for John Cena to sell his? Just the way that Ford let people have them, and you had to sign a 2-year contract saying that you wouldn't sell it and things like that. It all seems kind of ridiculous. I guess I get it when they give the car to certain people that they feel deserve it, but why wouldn't you let the biggest car channels review and go about the car? Maybe that's the reason, is they didn't want people that drove everything to know how the car did, because maybe they wouldn't like it as much. So give it to the next big Minecraft YouTuber, and of course he's going to say great things about it because it's a supercar and blah 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 and it's so cool. And to his audience that maybe doesn't know as much, it's going to be really cool to them, and I guess that makes sense. But the original Ford GT made 550 horsepower, which is a good number, but it came out of the same 3.5 liter EcoBoost engine that comes in F-150, just one extra turbo. So that's kind of already a letdown. Not that a twin-turbo V6 is bad, but it's a twin-turbo V6 and it's the same V6 that's in an F-150. That's the down part. Just doesn't sound as cool when someone can roll up in their EcoBoost and say, oh, we basically have the same motor, because it's true. You basically have the same motor. Of course, tuning differences and extra turbo. So that's already a knock at his performance. Also, price point technically starts at $400,000 is what they supposedly were selling them for, but you can obviously find them or have heard numbers of $600,000, things like that, of used ones and stuff like that, because they are rare and they are seen as valuable and stuff like that. Kind of like, I call it GT350R syndrome. There's so few of them that when one does come up for sale, it's way above what it should be, or what its MSRP was and things like that. Also kind of same with Civic Type R. That one gets marked up really bad for what it is. So the Mark II was released, and it is the GT track version. It's the same car, but they have taken away 200 pounds, which is a decent amount. That's a pretty good weight reduction. They increased downforce by 400 pounds, which that really probably didn't matter to begin with. I bet the other one stuck down to the road just as good, or just as much as it needed to be. Just like why the Koenigsegg Jesko does it really need all those 2,100 pounds of downforce? I'm sure it helps, but it probably was good at 1,500. It was probably good at 1,800 and things like that. Does it look cool that way? Yes. Anyways, of course, the extra downforce would make it be able to turn and stuff even better through turns, but did it really need all that extra? Does it look a little cooler with the different wing and stuff? Yeah. No one quite knows yet, but supposed to be around 200 extra horsepower, so original 550, now 750-ish, but I'm not sure if Ford just hasn't said the number, but most articles are just saying that it has around 200 more. There isn't a specific number yet. So, who knows? So you're taking a $400,000 car, and that already, and people could argue that oh, it's worth it. It's It looks really cool. It's exotic. It's got a twin turbo V6. It's got a tracked out interior and stuff like that. But what else could you get? A brand new, I'm gonna probably say this one a lot, a brand new R8 V10 Plus, coming with 610 plus horsepower, especially for the 2020 versions. They're up to like 620 or something like that. That car comes into $150,000 to $200,000. You could get any, pretty much McLaren 570, get 560 horsepower, so right on par. But for a 300 to 400k, you could get a 720, which is just an absolute just weapon of a car. It's ridiculous. I mean, obviously everyone knows it, and at this point, the McLaren thing's kind of getting boring because we know they're all good, and that the next one's gonna be great. And every YouTuber and their fucking friend is buying one and things like that. So yeah, the McLaren's a good option. But it's a good option because they've made it a good car. But certain things like the Ford GT, it didn't even beat like the original Viper at the Nürburgring, and that's a $100,000 car and things like that. And the Ford GT kind of nowadays gets to be named America's exotic when the Viper is kind of a better option regardless. I mean, V10 rear wheel drive, just a really wicked car. Not to say that the GT isn't. It's just not worth it at $400,000. There's better options. Now, the $400,000 comes into because it's limited quantity and things like that, so it makes it more desirable, I guess. And the people that buy them probably aren't going to be daily driving them, probably going to be putting them on shelves and things to keep in their collection to make it that much more valuable. I get it, but Ford is a company that really likes to make their cars for people. Look at their ad campaigns and things like that, and how they're trying to talk up their vehicles to get more sales and things like that, and all this stuff. So the Ford GT Mark II being $1.2 million. Get them. We'll stick with McLaren. Get a McLaren P1. Get a Porsche 911 or 918 Spider. Get a LaFerrari. Get something cool. Get pretty much any not quite any, but get an Aventador, something like that. Get something truly cool. I don't know if you can go all the way up to SVJ. I don't recall those numbers off the top of my head, but you can probably get up to SV, and I would argue that's better than a Ford GT. And the Mark II isn't street legal. So only track. We're going to see how McLaren does with their Speedtail with that stipulation, because that one's not street legal either. So you won't get to drive your $1 million car around. Again, not that many people would. I get it. But why would anyone buy the Mark II over anything? And they're only, of course, making a couple of them. They're not making thousands of them and everything. It's just going to be really for collectors. It just doesn't make sense. If you want a tracked out car, there are just better options. And I don't get why Ford is still trying to push the GT. They make pretty cool cars. I mean, the fucking Explorer ST comes with 400 horsepower. That's crazy. That's in an SUV right now. That's not the Lamborghini Urus or something like that. The Ford Fusion has their fucking sedan comes with a 300 horsepower. Like that, if I'm not mistaken, that is the only option. The Mustang is currently fighting the Camaro in the bottom end, which is really cool with the Mustang Performance a 2 package, I think it is, or that might be for the Mustang GT. But the Mustang 4-cylinder option has now kind of like a 1LE version like the Camaro does. You can get a cool track-inspired Mustang with the 4-cylinder that doesn't cost 40 grand. And that's really cool. And the F-150 will be the best-selling truck forever. The Mustang will be the best-selling muscle car probably forever. They make good vehicles. I personally think that they don't last as long as the other brands and things like that. But they make cars that people want, and they know what they're doing most of the time. Of course, everyone's mad that they got rid of the Focus. uh, in America and things like that. No ST, no RS, and that kind of sucks. Oh well. But the GT just, why did they? I mean, it's cool that Ford is finally making $1 million car, but I think it's the wrong car. I think they need to. I don't know. It does make 700-ish horsepower. That is a really good number. But when $1 million cars are making close to 1,000 horsepower, it's not as good, especially when something, I mean, kind of comparable. Corvette ZR1, $150,000 car making 750 horsepower, 750 torque, and you still get that V8 sound, which is something that matters, especially for American automakers. That V8 is like a staple. And they tested out the waters with the twin-turbo V6, and people didn't really like it, but it kind of went away, and people just accepted that the GT was a cool car. But, like, why would someone get, unless they already had everything they wanted, I guess get the Ford GT Mark II, because it's the next thing to add to your collection. It's the next big car. Cool, I guess. But I don't know. It just boggles my mind. I don't get it. So I guess that's all we have for today. Why would someone buy the GT Mark II? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. You got a very, very small market and very limited reason to buy one besides adding it to your collection. But no one's buying it because, oh, it's going to be so much better. The Ford GT is not winning every race it's in, if you're looking at that aspect of it. It's not making headlines and how it just wins. It's just not there. So, that's this short rant over. That's how I feel about the GT. Why would you get one? GT or Mark II? I don't know. But it is making headlines and stuff, and I figured I'd talk about it. Now I always try to go at all these vehicles on why would someone get one, and doesn't make sense in the market and things like that. So hopefully the reasons seem understandable. If there are any vehicles you would like me to talk about, obviously comment them down below. As always, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. Very much appreciated. And we'll see where we go to in our next video. I guess that's all, and this is being a very awkward ending. Sorry about this. Most of you have already probably turned off the video, but I think that's where we're at. Have a good day. See you in the next video.